Do you like playing physical games? Do you like going to the store and buying a brand new game off the shelf? Do you like maybe receiving a video game for Christmas or for your birthday? Well, kiss those days goodbye. So a new FTC filing has revealed that Microsoft plans on releasing a brand new Xbox Series X probably sometime next year that does not have a disk drive. To refresh you guys, the current Xbox Series X does have a disk drive. It has been touted as Microsoft's and gaming's most powerful gaming console of all time, and it does have a disk drive. But when they launched the Xbox Series X in 2020, they, alongside it, released a slimmed down diskless version that is also a lot less powerful, called the Xbox Series S. And over the last 3 years, it's been pretty neck and neck to see the Series S and the Series X selling. In fact, based off of what I have been able to find, it looks like the Series S might actually have been selling more this whole time, although that might also just be because of the pandemic. People were willing to just get a new Xbox Series system. They didn't care what it was, as long as they could get anything, and the S just happened to be in stock more often. Other than the lack of a disk drive, this new Xbox seems to be identical to the one we have right now. In fact, from the FTC filing, it looks like Microsoft's plan is to completely discontinue making the current Xbox Series X that you can buy on store shelves right now in favor of this new diskless version, which would mean that in a year or two, if you want to buy a brand new Xbox, there will be zero options for you to get one that is capable of playing game discs. Now, Microsoft actually has a history of pushing digital content, going all the way back to the launch of the Xbox One. Infamously, their E3 presentation in 2023 left a lot to be desired.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message. If you don't, like it.
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device.
Now, there was a lot of flack and a lot of pushback and a lot of criticism on Microsoft for trying to push a digital era when a lot of the world just wasn't ready for it, and so they backpedaled, and for all intents and purposes, the Xbox One launched and had its full life without much incident as far as pushing digital content goes. Although I will point out that I think it was in 2017, Microsoft did launch a variant of the Xbox One S called the All Digital Edition, which lacked a disk drive. Otherwise, it was the exact same system. In fact, people who took it apart realized they even reused the same shell and the same internals. It was just programmed so that it could run without a disk drive, and they took out the disk drive. That was the only difference. And I have a hard time finding sales data on how that particular Xbox One S did. And most of the people that I see on YouTube who got one are mostly like tech reviewers or people who exist solely to make meme content. But now we're in the 9th generation of gaming, where Xbox Series S and X are the current platform. And yeah, like I said already, the Series S is a system that exists and is selling pretty darn well that cannot play discs at all. And even more than that, it looks like Microsoft has been trying to push for digital games for a little while now. One of the biggest releases on the Xbox Series systems is Alan Wake 2, which, when they announced it, they said blatantly it will not be getting a physical release. And there's a few other examples as well, but that was probably the first indication that something was going on. I think one of the biggest indications that Microsoft has been pushing more towards a digital future is the number one thing that's generating revenue right now, Game Pass. Game Pass this generation has been a no-brainer for Xbox fanboys. If you buy an Xbox Series S for $250 and you have Game Pass for only $10 a month, which is what it costs on the Xbox, that gives you a library of literally hundreds, if not thousands of games that you can just play whenever you want. You don't need to own the games, you don't need to have the physical discs for them. For a lot of people, in various situations, I could totally see the appeal. And even the games that have released on disc, they have not been complete on disc for a very long time. I remember in the Xbox One days, I kept buying games for the Xbox One that needed at the very least day one patches, and the vast majority of them needed to download significant portions of the game from Xbox's servers. And Microsoft is not alone in this. It's also a big problem with Sony, and even Nintendo has quite a few games that require a download on the Switch. But it's definitely the most obvious with Xbox. One great example is Jedi Survivor on the Xbox Series X. It's a 150 gigabyte game, and the disc could only hold 100 gigs, so the developers decided, well, if we can't even put the whole game on there anyway, then why not just put the bare minimum and force you to download the 150 gig game anyway? And that is the norm with Xbox games. It has been the norm with Xbox games for a long time. It is rare, extremely rare, to find an Xbox game that is complete on disc, and almost always it's something from Limited Run Games or something like that. It is very unlikely that you can go to the store and pick up a random game and plop it in your Xbox and it's ready to go without you having to download an update. So it's been obvious for a while that Microsoft has been going towards an all-digital future. They're not the only ones, but they're definitely the ones that have been pushing it the most. So I think most gamers saw this coming a long time ago. We just, I guess, didn't expect for it to happen in the middle of a generation. I think most of us expected maybe whatever the next one is in the 10th generation, maybe that will launch with just digital systems. It looks like Microsoft's like, no, we're going to do it in the middle of the 9th generation. So what would losing discs mean? Well, the number one thing that I can think of, especially for the Microsoft Xbox brand, is backwards compatibility. Right now on the Xbox Series X, you can throw in a disc from almost every single Xbox One game, over a half of all Xbox 360 games, and even a handful of original Xbox games all the way back from 2001. You can get a disc for those games and throw it in your Series X and it'll play. Backwards compatibility is one of the biggest appeals of the Xbox. That's why a lot of my friends who are especially retro gamers have Series X's, is so that they can play these old games in 4K 60 and they look amazing and they don't need to buy the game all over again. For people who still have internet data caps, that is the vast majority of people, by the way, it means that you got to be a lot more careful now with what you download and when and how often. And another big problem is just that games are kind of big these days. I mentioned Jedi Survivor being 150 gigs. Well, the base Xbox Series X right now is only a terabyte. Although the FTC filing says that the new Xbox Series X will be 2 terabytes, you guys would be surprised at how fast 2 terabytes can fill up, especially if you have these big games right now that are 100, almost 200 gigabytes big sometimes. I mean, that's just 10 or 20 games, and then you'll have to get a new storage expansion. There's other problems as well, but I think I made my point. So Microsoft is going for an all-digital future, and it looks like they're going for it sooner rather than later. Well, what does this mean for Sony and Nintendo? Thankfully, not much. Over the past few weeks, we've been hearing about the Nintendo Switch successor being demoed at Gamescom and development kits being sent out to some publishers. And the reports so far are that, 1, it's 100% compatible with Nintendo Switch games, and 2, it does still have a cartridge slot for brand new games. So it looks like for now, at least, Nintendo is still 100% in on physical games, which is obviously makes sense because the Switch collectors are kind of nuts. Like, I don't think that a console has ever been this heavily collected while it was relevant in all of history. People really love collecting Switch games, and I'm sure that Nintendo feels that the Switch successor, whatever it's called, will be just as popular with physical collectors. So this absolutely does not affect Nintendo at all, but what about Sony and PlayStation? Well, the PlayStation 5 digital version already exists, and it is identical to the normal PlayStation 5. This is one thing that set apart the Xbox Series systems from the PlayStation systems, is that the PlayStation 5 digital and physical editions are identical, except one has a disc drive and one doesn't. And I am upset about that because the digital version looks nicer. I mean, it does. Just look at it. Even the box looks nicer, man. But here's the thing. The physical editions of PlayStation 5 are way more popular. Like, I think I saw somewhere that the physical is outselling the digital edition anywhere between 5-1 and 10-1. People really care about owning the physical PlayStation 5, and they were a lot happier putting off getting a PlayStation 5 until the physical version was available, instead of just jumping on the digital version just because it was available. And here's a big thing about the PlayStation 5 digital version. It actually recognizes when you connect an external drive. There have been tests that I've seen on YouTube of people buying external 4K Blu-ray players and connecting it to the PlayStation 5 through the USB-C port in the front, and the PS5 does recognize it. Even the digital version does recognize the disk drive being plugged in. It just doesn't play anything because it's blocked out right now on a firmware level. So all it would take is a single patch from Sony or somebody hacking the PlayStation 5 and putting in their own firmware or whatever, and that feature is unlocked. Sony doesn't feel comfortable in an all-digital future just yet. My gut tells me that since both Sony and Nintendo are Japanese companies and Japan loves their physical media, they'll continue valuing physical releases for the foreseeable future. In conclusion, this news really only affects people who are in the Xbox ecosystem, and I feel like the vast majority of those people are not going to be that affected by losing discs. I mean, it's always nice to own something, to put it on your shelf, be able to lend it to a friend or sell it to GameStop or what have you, but, well, if you're in the Xbox ecosystem, that stuff might not matter. Because when it comes down to it, for $10 a month, you can play whatever you want, and a lot of people value that more than dropping $60 or $70 just to own a piece of plastic. Let me know what you think about this news. Do you not care? Maybe this doesn't affect you at all. Or is this such a deal breaker that you're never going to buy another Xbox or Microsoft product again? I want to hear what you guys think. And thank you all for watching this video. This is not stuff that I usually talk about, but I thought it was important enough for me to make the video, throw it out there, and share with you guys. That does it for now. Thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for more.